O2. Hulk. Hulk, also known as the Hulk, is a 2003 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character. The film explores Bruce Banner's origins. After a lab accident involving gamma radiation, he transforms into a giant green-skinned humanoid with superhuman strength known as the Hulk whenever stressed or emotionally provoked. The United States military pursues him, and he clashes with his biological father, who has dark plans for his son. Plot: in 1969, David Banner is a genetics researcher for the government trying to improve human DNA. His supervisor, Colonel Thaddeus "Thunderbolt" Ross, forbids human experimentation, so David experiments on himself. His wife Edith gives birth to their son, Bruce Banner. David realizes Bruce inherited his mutant DNA and attempts to find a cure. After discovering his experiments, Ross shuts down David's research. In a fit of psychotic rage, David rigs Desert Base's gamma reactor to explode as revenge. Believing he is dangerous, David tries to kill Bruce but accidentally murders Edith when she gets between them. The trauma causes the subconscious suppression of Bruce's early childhood memories. Ross arrests and sends David to a mental hospital, putting the 4-year-old Bruce into foster care. Mrs. Krenzler adopts him, and Bruce assumes the surname, growing up believing his birth parents are dead. 30 years later, Bruce is a brilliant scientist working at the Berkeley lab with his ex-girlfriend and Ross's estranged daughter, Betty Ross. Representing the private research company Athene, the shady Glenn Talbot becomes interested in the scientist's nanomedes research to create regenerating soldiers for the military-industrial complex. David reappears as a janitor in the lab building to infiltrate Bruce's life. The now General Ross investigates, becoming concerned for Betty's safety around Bruce. Bruce saves a colleague named Harper from an accident with a malfunctioning gamisphere. Bruce awakens in a hospital bed and tells Betty he feels better than ever, but Betty cannot fathom his survival since the nanomedes killed everything else. Unknown to them, the radiation merged with Bruce's altered DNA. Later, David meets Bruce, revealing their relationship and hinting at Bruce's mutation. He later uses samples of Bruce's DNA for animal experimentation. At the lab, Bruce realizes that David is his father, triggering flashes of his repressed traumatic memories. Increasing rage from the realization activates his gamma-radiated DNA. He becomes the Hulk and demolishes the lab. Betty finds Bruce unconscious in his home the following day, who barely remembers the previous night. Ross arrives later to question Bruce and, after hours of interrogation, seizes the lab and places him under house arrest. Betty locates David and investigates him. David calls Bruce that night, revealing he mutated his 3 dogs and sent them to attack Betty, enraging Bruce. Bemoaning the lab's destruction, Talbot attacks Bruce, who transforms and injures Talbot and Ross's MPs. The Hulk finds Betty in her forest cabin, saves her from the dogs, and changes back. Betty calls Ross the following day. The army tranquilizes and takes Bruce to Desert Base. Deeming him doomed to follow in David's footsteps, Ross doubts helping Bruce, but Betty persuades Ross to let her try. David subjects himself to the nanomedes and gamma sphere, becoming able to meld with and absorb the properties of anything he touches. Talbot wrestles control from Ross, forcing Betty to return home. Seeking to profit from the Hulk's power, Talbot fails to provoke Bruce and puts him in an isolation tank. David confronts Betty at her house, offering to surrender himself yet asking to speak to Bruce one last time. Talbot induces a nightmare from Bruce's repressed memories and triggers a transformation. Following an unsuccessful attempt to take a sample of the Hulk, Talbot gets himself killed when he fires an explosive round that backfires. Ross resumes command. The Hulk escapes the base, battles the army in the desert, and leads to San Francisco to find Betty. She convinces Ross to take her to the Hulk, returning Bruce to normal. Bruce and David talk at a base in the city while Ross watches, threatening to incinerate them. David has descended into megalomania, wanting Bruce's power to stabilize his unstable molecules so he may successfully destroy all his enemies. After Bruce refuses, David bites into a high-voltage cable when Ross powers it, absorbing the energy and mutating into a powerful electrical entity. Bruce becomes the Hulk and fights and overpowers him. They are presumed dead after Ross orders a gamma-charge bomb to end the battle. A year later, Ross constantly monitors Betty, as numerous Hulk sightings get reported, and reconciles with her. In exile in the Amazon rainforest, Bruce is alive as a medical camp doctor. His camp gets overrun by soldiers who try to steal their supplies. After Bruce unsuccessfully warns their commander not to make him angry, the Hulk roars in rage. Hulk was released by Universal Pictures on June 20, 2003. The film grossed $245.4 million worldwide and received mixed reviews. A planned sequel which would have been released in May 2005 was repurposed as a reboot titled The Incredible Hulk and released on June 13, 2008, as the second film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.